Before he drank the cup of poison that would end his life, Socrates looked around the courtroom one last time. The men who sentenced him to die were silent now, avoiding his eyes. He wasn't afraid. He simply smiled, as if he knew something they didn't, that truth cannot be killed. This old man, barefoot and poor, had changed the world with nothing but his words. He owned no riches, built no empire, and wrote no books. Yet thousands of years later, his ideas still breathe inside every classroom, every mind that dares to question. What made Socrates so powerful? Why did Athens, the birthplace of wisdom, destroy its wisest man? This is the story of a man who proved that real genius isn't about knowledge, it's about the courage to seek it. Socrates was born around 470 BC in Athens, a city bursting with art, trade, and ideas. His father was a stonemason, his mother a midwife. They lived a simple life, and nothing about his childhood suggested he would become one of history's greatest thinkers. But even as a boy, Socrates was different. While others played games, he asked endless questions, not out of rebellion, but out of curiosity. He didn't want to win arguments. He wanted to understand why people believed what they did. He would stop craftsmen in the market and ask, "What makes a good shoe?" Then he would ask, "And what makes a good man?" His questions, though simple, revealed how little others truly knew about their own beliefs. Athens admired intelligence but also loved confidence. People liked to sound wise even if they weren't. Socrates noticed this early. He realized that knowledge without understanding was like a statue, beautiful, but lifeless. As he grew older, he trained as a stonemason like his father. But inside, his real work was shaping ideas, not stone. He found joy in conversations more than in craftsmanship. He wanted to carve truth out of human thought. During his youth, Athens was becoming powerful. Democracy was new, and philosophers, poets, and artists were celebrated. Yet beneath the beauty of Athens there was arrogance, the belief that they already knew everything worth knowing. Socrates quietly set out to challenge that illusion. He didn't read books because he believed real wisdom wasn't written on paper but found through dialogue. He walked barefoot through the city, speaking to anyone, rich or poor, slave or noble. He wasn't teaching, he was discovering. People began to notice him. Some admired his curiosity. Others found him irritating. He made them uncomfortable because he exposed ignorance in places where people wanted to appear wise. But Socrates wasn't cruel. He simply believed that admitting ignorance was the first step toward truth. This belief became the foundation of his philosophy, to know that you know nothing. It was both humility and power, because once you accept your ignorance, you become free to learn. Socrates wasn't just a thinker, he was also a soldier. During the Peloponnesian War, he fought bravely for Athens. He stood firm in battle, calm and fearless, even when chaos surrounded him. His courage impressed his fellow soldiers. He never fled, never sought fame. To him, bravery was not about strength but about principle. He once saved the life of a young man named Alcibiades during battle, proving that his wisdom extended beyond words, it guided his actions. While others boasted about their victories, Socrates returned home quietly. He didn't see war as glory but as proof of how little humans understood about virtue and justice. He believed the real battle was within the soul, between wisdom and ignorance. After the war, Athens was scarred. People sought comfort in wealth and pleasure. Philosophers began to debate endlessly, chasing fame and money. Socrates walked among them, different from them all. He wore simple clothes, ate little, and spoke only of truth. He would stand in the marketplace for hours, lost in thought. People whispered that he could stand motionless all day, deep in contemplation. Some thought him mad, others saw something divine in his calm. But behind that stillness was fire. Socrates was preparing Athens for a revolution, not of weapons, but of minds. He believed the city's strength didn't lie in power or empire, but in the moral health of its people. He began questioning leaders, poets, and teachers. "What is justice?" he would ask. "What is courage? What is goodness?" Those who tried to answer quickly found themselves trapped in contradictions. Socrates didn't insult them. He guided them gently to realize they didn't know what they claimed to know. This way of questioning became known as the Socratic method, a conversation that leads a person to discover truth by uncovering their own ignorance. It wasn't teaching, it was awakening. Yet not everyone appreciated it. Those exposed by his questions felt humiliated. They began to see him not as a wise man, but as a dangerous one. Socrates had no school, no office, no followers who paid him. He taught in open air, in markets, gymnasiums, and public squares. Anyone could join his discussions. His students weren't children of privilege but seekers of truth. Among them were future legends, Plato, Xenophon, and many others. They watched their master dismantle false arguments with calm precision. Socrates didn't preach, he listened. He believed wisdom was hidden in everyone, they just needed help to find it. He lived in poverty by choice. He said that comfort distracts people from wisdom. His wife, Xantippe, often scolded him for neglecting money and home. But Socrates smiled, saying that the fewer his wants, the closer he was to freedom. He believed that the soul, not wealth or beauty, defined a person's worth. When others chased fame, he sought virtue. To him, goodness was knowledge. To do wrong was to act in ignorance. People gathered around him daily. Some came to learn. Others came to mock. But his words left marks on everyone. His calm voice, filled with reason, could humble the proud and inspire the lost. He became famous, though he never sought fame. Plays were written mocking him, yet people still flocked to hear him speak. Athens both admired and feared him. His questions pierced the city's heart. When he asked, "What is justice?" politicians grew uneasy. When he asked, "What is piety?" priests trembled. He wasn't attacking religion or politics. He was exposing hypocrisy wherever it hid. Slowly, enemies grew. They accused him of corrupting the youth, of teaching them to question authority. And in Athens, questioning authority was a dangerous act. The sun hung heavy over Athens, washing the marble city in blinding light. Crowds filled the streets, whispering the same name, Socrates. The old philosopher, the barefoot man of the marketplace, was about to face his fate. For decades he had been the city's conscience, questioning the powerful, the poets, the priests. But Athens had grown tired of his questions. The democracy that once celebrated free speech was now afraid of it. Socrates stood accused of two crimes, corrupting the youth and disrespecting the gods. To most, the charges seemed strange. He had never urged rebellion, never insulted the divine. His only weapon was his words. But words can be dangerous when they make people think. As he walked through the crowded court, people murmured. Some pitied him. Others smirked, glad to see him finally silenced. His face was calm, his eyes bright, his step steady. At 70 years old, he carried no fear, only clarity. The judges looked down on him as he began his defense. There was no lawyer, no fancy rhetoric. Only his voice, quiet, firm, unshaken. Athenians, he said, I am accused of corrupting the youth. But what is corruption? If I teach them to seek truth, to question lies, is that corruption, or education? The crowd shifted uneasily. He continued, and they say I do not believe in the gods. But I tell you, I believe in a divine voice that guides me. It stops me from doing wrong. Is that not the voice of the gods within us? He wasn't defending his life. He was defending reason itself. He told the jury that long ago, the oracle at Delphi had called him the wisest man in Athens. I went to prove the oracle wrong, he said. I found poets, politicians, and craftsmen who all claimed wisdom. But none could explain what they knew. So I understood, the oracle was right. The wisest man is he who knows he does not know. The courtroom fell silent. His words pierced through pride. But truth, when spoken plainly, can wound more deeply than a sword. His accusers, Meletus, Anytus, and Lyco, argued that he was a danger to society. They said he turned young minds against tradition. He makes them mock their fathers, they cried. Socrates only smiled. If I make them think, and thinking makes them question, then perhaps it is not me they mock, but ignorance. His courage infuriated them. The jury expected him to beg for mercy, to play humble. Instead, he spoke like a free man. I fear neither death nor judgment, he said. What I fear is doing wrong, for wrongdoing harms the soul, and death does not. When the votes were cast, the decision came, guilty. Some gasped. Others clapped quietly. Socrates remained still. Then the judges asked him to suggest his own punishment. Most men would plead for exile or fines. Socrates paused and said calmly, I deserve a reward, free meals in the hall of heroes, for I have served this city with truth. The court erupted in outrage. His students, Plato among them, watched in despair. The final vote sealed his fate, death by hemlock. That night, his followers begged him to flee. They offered bribes, escape plans, safe houses. Socrates refused. Would I destroy the laws that I spent my life defending? He asked. If I break them now, I'd betray everything I stand for. He spent his remaining days in peace, speaking of justice and virtue. Athens had condemned him, but he had already won, for his calm exposed their fear, and his truth outlived their anger. The prison cell was small, lit only by a faint beam of sunlight slipping through the bars. The air was still, heavy with sorrow. Socrates sat cross-legged on his bed, surrounded by his students. His face glowed with a strange peace. Plato, Crito, and the others watched him, torn between grief and disbelief. How could a man so close to death appear so alive? Crito spoke first. Socrates, the guards are bribed. We can leave tonight. Please, live. Socrates smiled gently. My friend, I have taught all my life that one must never do wrong, not even in return for wrong. If I escape, I harm the laws I have lived by. What meaning would my words have then? Plato's eyes filled with tears. But you are innocent, he whispered. Innocent, perhaps, Socrates said. But what matters is not how the world judges me, but how I judge my soul. Better to die for truth than live in deceit. The conversation turned to life and death. Socrates spoke softly, his voice filled with light. Death is not to be feared. It is either a deep sleep without dreams, or a journey to another place where one may meet all who have died before us. In both, there is peace. His calmness astonished everyone. Even the jailer, hardened by years of seeing condemned men tremble, wiped tears from his eyes. Socrates spent his last hours speaking of the soul, how it is eternal, how it is shaped by our actions. He said the soul, once freed from the body, continues its quest for wisdom. So, he smiled, death is not an end, but a beginning. When the sun began to set, the guard entered quietly, holding the cup of poison. No one spoke. The silence felt sacred. Socrates took the cup without trembling. Tell me, he asked the guard, may I pour a little for the gods? The guard nodded through tears. Socrates whispered a prayer, thanking the divine for the gift of truth. He turned to his friends and said, do not weep for me. The time has come to go, I to die, you to live. Which is better, only the gods know. He drank. Slowly, calmly. His body stiffened as the poison spread, but his eyes remained kind. Crito, he whispered, we owe a cock to Asclepius. Pay the debt and forget not. It was his last joke, comparing death to a healing, a cure for life's sickness. Moments later, his breath faded. His hand fell. And Athens lost the greatest soul it had ever known. Outside, the city lights glimmered. But within those walls, something eternal had been born, an idea that truth and virtue are stronger than death. After Socrates' death, Athens felt an emptiness it could not name. Those who had cheered his execution now whispered his words in regret. The man they silenced became the voice of their guilt. Plato, heartbroken yet determined, began writing every memory, every conversation. His dialogues became the vessel through which Socrates would live again. In those writings, Socrates continued to ask questions, to challenge minds, to stir souls. Plato founded the Academy, the first great school of philosophy. And though his name shone, he never forgot his master. He once said, Socrates is the man who brought philosophy down from the heavens to dwell among men. From Plato came Aristotle, and from Aristotle came generations of thinkers who shaped science, ethics, and politics. The chain began with one barefoot man who refused to stop asking, why? Even centuries later, Roman philosophers studied Socrates as a model of virtue. Early Christians admired his courage and moral strength. His death became a symbol of the triumph of the spirit over worldly power. What made him so enduring was not his knowledge, but his honesty. He admitted ignorance, and in doing so, opened a door for endless discovery. His method of questioning, the Socratic method, became the heart of learning. Every teacher who asks students to think critically, every scientist who questions assumptions, every soul who looks within, all follow his path. Time changed, Empires rose and fell, languages died and were reborn, but Socrates' spirit remained. His voice echoes in every person who refuses to accept lies just because they are comfortable. He proved that truth does not need armies, gold, or monuments. It needs only one courageous heart to speak it aloud. And though Athens once condemned him, the world now calls him its greatest teacher. History often remembers Socrates as a marble figure, calm, wise, unshakable. But the real man was far more human, filled with contradictions, humor, and heart. To understand his genius, one must first see the man behind the wisdom. He was not handsome. In fact, Athenians called him ugly. His nose was flat, his belly round, and his eyes bulged slightly. Yet there was something magnetic about him. His presence drew people in, not through beauty, but through the light in his words. Socrates had no interest in luxury. He walked barefoot through the dust of Athens, wearing the same cloak in summer and winter. When people mocked his simplicity, he laughed. "If a man needs little," he said, "then the world cannot take much from him." His wife, Xantippe, was known for her fiery temper. Stories say she scolded him often, angry that he ignored money and family duties. One day, after an argument, she threw a pot of water over his head. Socrates only smiled and said, "After thunder there must be rain." He never raised his voice. His calmness was not weakness but control. He believed that anger blinds judgment, and a philosopher must see clearly, even in conflict. He loved to talk with everyone: fishermen, soldiers, housewives, politicians. To him, wisdom did not belong to scholars alone, it hid in every human heart. He said, "I am a midwife of ideas. I help others give birth to the truth they already carry inside." Many came to test him. Some tried to trap him with clever arguments, but he gently turned their words back on them, revealing how little they truly knew. He never mocked them. He simply smiled and said, "Let us think together." His humor was gentle, never cruel. He could disarm pride with a single question. When a rich man bragged about his fortune, Socrates asked, "If you lost all your gold but kept your mind, would you still be rich?" The man had no answer. Despite his wisdom, Socrates was not without flaws. He could be stubborn, lost in thought, and unaware of daily life. He sometimes forgot meals, even appointments. His friends said he could stand motionless for hours, deep in reflection, as if speaking with the universe itself. But his humanity made him greater, not lesser. He showed that wisdom wasn't about perfection but about awareness, knowing one's limits, one's weaknesses, and still striving for truth. Socrates loved Athens deeply, even when it condemned him. He once said, "I am like a gadfly sent by the gods to awaken this great horse of a city." His sting was his questions, and his purpose was to keep Athens alive, aware, and humble. He lived during times of political turmoil. After years of war, Athens had lost its glory. Corruption grew, arrogance returned, and people craved comfort more than truth. Socrates saw it, and refused to stay silent. That courage, to stand alone against the majority, became his greatest lesson to the world. He taught that the good life is not about pleasure or wealth, but about virtue, doing what is right, even when it costs you everything. "It is better to suffer wrong than to do wrong," he said, a sentence so simple yet so hard to live. When his friends asked how to live well, he said, "Take care of your soul." To Socrates, the soul was the truest part of us, not flesh, not name, not status, but conscience. And if the soul is corrupted by greed or lies, then even a king lives poorly. This message terrified those in power. A man who makes others think deeply is more dangerous than any army. Because once people begin to question, control fades. But Socrates didn't want power. He wanted clarity. He wanted to free people from illusions, the illusion of wisdom, of wealth, of success. He taught that a man who knows his ignorance is closer to wisdom than one who boasts of knowledge. Even in his death, Socrates proved his ideas. He refused to flee, showing that a just man cannot be harmed by injustice. His enemies killed his body, but they could not touch his integrity. The real genius of Socrates wasn't that he knew all the answers, it was that he lived his philosophy. Every word he spoke matched his actions. His honesty made people trust him, even when they disagreed. When people remember him as a philosopher, they forget that he was also a teacher, a father, a husband, a friend. He laughed, argued, listened, forgave. He was as human as the rest of us, yet he chose truth over comfort, always. He once said, "I would rather die having spoken my mind than live in silence with a lie." That single line is enough to explain his soul. Socrates' life reminds us that genius is not a gift from birth but a choice made daily. To think, to question, to live honestly even when the world punishes you for it. And so, the man behind the wisdom was not a god or a saint, but a human being who dared to live as his soul commanded, a rare, shining flame that refused to go out, even when surrounded by darkness. Centuries have passed, empires have fallen, and yet the voice of Socrates still whispers through time. His questions, his courage, his calm defiance, they are not buried in the dust of history. They live in every mind that dares to think freely. When modern thinkers ask, "What is justice?" or "What is truth?" they echo his words. Every philosopher, scientist, teacher, and dreamer who searches for understanding walks a path that began with him. But why does Socrates still matter so deeply today? Because his message touches something timeless, the human need to seek meaning. He taught that a person's worth lies not in what they own, but in what they understand about themselves. He said, "An unexamined life is not worth living." That sentence has outlived every empire that once mocked him. In today's world, where information floods every screen, Socrates reminds us that wisdom is not about knowing more, but understanding better. It's not about being right, but being honest. He taught us to question not only the world but ourselves, our motives, our fears, our beliefs. That self-questioning is the root of growth. Without it, humanity becomes blind, chasing comfort instead of truth. Imagine if Socrates lived today. He would not be impressed by technology or fame. He would walk through cities and ask, "Are people happier? Do they know themselves?" His questions would still sting because they reveal how little we've changed. The power of his method is eternal. He didn't give answers, he gave direction. He showed that truth is not found in books or temples but in honest dialogue, the kind that breaks pride and awakens conscience. Every time a teacher encourages a student to think, Socrates lives. Every time a person admits, "I might be wrong," Socrates smiles. Every time someone chooses integrity over comfort, his spirit rises again. The genius of Socrates lies in his faith in the human soul. He believed that within every person lies the capacity for wisdom, not the wisdom of facts, but of understanding what truly matters. He made philosophy human. Before him, thinkers spoke only of the stars and gods. Socrates brought philosophy down to earth, to the market, to the kitchen, to the heart. He made it about how to live, how to love, how to die. Even his death became a lesson. He showed that truth is worth dying for, and that a life without truth is not life at all. His calm in the face of poison remains one of the most powerful acts of moral courage ever witnessed. He didn't build monuments, but his words became immortal temples. He didn't write books, but his students wrote for him, carrying his flame through generations. Plato once said, "Socrates is the wisest and justest and best of all men I have ever known." That love between student and teacher became the seed of Western thought. Through Plato and Aristotle, Socrates shaped centuries of minds, from Augustine to Descartes, from Newton to Nietzsche. His echo reached every corner of thought. Yet beyond philosophy, his story is deeply human, a reminder that truth has a price, and that courage begins with the willingness to stand alone. In every age there are new sophists, those who sell lies, twist words, and chase power. And in every age there must be new Socrates, those who ask, quietly but firmly, "Is this true?" That is why he never dies. The world changes, but truth remains. And truth always needs a voice. Socrates became that voice, calm, humble, unbreakable. His genius was not about intellect but integrity. He taught that the mind and the soul must walk together. When we think deeply and live honestly, we become free. So when we ask, "What is the meaning of life?" we are already living his lesson. Because the question itself, sincere, open, fearless, is what he gave us. The story of Socrates is not about the past. It's about the present, about every person who dares to live by conscience, not convenience. The man who questioned Athens now questions the world. And though his body turned to dust long ago, his truth remains untouchable, eternal, alive in every human heart that chooses wisdom over ignorance. That is the genius of Socrates. Not a man of power, but a man of purpose. Not a man of answers, but a man of questions. A soul who proved that even when the world silences your voice, truth will keep speaking, forever.